What we'll go into now actually is advice for all of the noobs, because I think this fits in well with it. And one thing I take from that straight away is, and I think it's connected to the quote which you live by, which I liked so much. What is that? Because I've forgotten it and I haven't looked it up.
So it's...
This is the Ambitious Creators Podcast with your host, Max Sinclair. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ambitious Creators Podcast, episode number 8, and I am here joined by my close friend. I've had you at the top of my list, Hayley, right from the beginning when I first thought of doing this podcast to have you on. So thank you very much, Hayley Dasovich. I'll say your proper name. So Hayley, I wanted to have on because it's the Ambitious Creators Podcast, and it's made for people that are creators and have done ambitious things. And while I don't know how whether you describe yourself actually particularly as ambitious necessarily, or you just actually did it, but you have been a success. You've got over 560 something thousand YouTube subscribers now, and like 20. I didn't see this until now. I looked it up yesterday. 22 million views you've had on your videos, which is absolutely insane. And then also I think the other very important thing to point out is just unbelievably well done video content for years now. And yeah, I loved it. I think when I first discovered you through Travel TomTom, I was very glad I did. And we obviously did our Iceland trip. I mean, that we should probably say that, shouldn't we? How we know each other was an Iceland trip we did back in February, pre-COVID, when the last month where the world was normal, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was our last great adventure before everyone went into lockdown, pretty much before travel was postponed for a year or 2 years.
Yeah, and as well, the crazy thing was that was literally the end, because you came to visit me just when you were flying home, just as basically everything was getting shut down, wasn't it? So yeah, and that was amazing. Like, we can talk about that anyway, and I know that you're doing all these other trips now, like, is it Galapagos, and what was the other one?
Yeah, I'm doing, so the first group trip that I actually was able to, promote was obviously the one that we did together, going to Iceland, and it was a really great success, I would say. And so I decided to plan a couple more group trips. There's one coming up in June 2021 to Galapagos, and then September 2021 going to Namibia in Africa.
Yeah, both of those are amazing. For anyone who knows me, knows I did ecotourism for a long time, and yeah, Namibia is spectacular. Like the desert elephants and all these kinds of things that you can get to see out there, and Galapagos is, especially for the British, I think, because we've got this biology kind of history around us. Like everyone who's into nature is obsessed with trying to get to the Galapagos at least once in their life, aren't they? Because it's natural evolution and everything, the history of it there, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I would say it's definitely a bucket list country for most people, including myself. So I guess I am speaking for myself.
Yeah, it's purely selfish, actually, isn't it? Doing all of these trips.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I want to go there, but on top of that, if I want to go there, why not invite as many people as possible?
Yeah, and I think why, to be fair, the Iceland trip was so great, and I'm sure these ones will be, is because it was literally like you just going on holiday with your friends. Like, I was the most unprofessional host you could get, but it worked out perfectly, I think. And we're still friends on WhatsApp, aren't we? Like, still wishing each other's birthdays and all the rest of it.
Oh yeah, everyone is very active in that group chat, which is great because you get a bunch of strangers together. And what travel does is it shows people's truest emotions.
Yeah.
Because you're all put together as strangers in like this chaotic and stressful environment, no matter where you go. Like, travel woes are everywhere. Nothing's ever going to go perfect. And most of the time, travelers are the kind of people that like go with the flow, anything goes. You got a good sense of humor, and like everyone can have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember one of the big things I took away from it, which I think all of us did, was it was almost the most horrifying bit, or the most scary part, was that storm. Like, we got stuck out in the middle of a glacier, in the middle of a serious Icelandic storm with 100 knot winds and all of these things. But actually that was our favorite part of the entire trip, and that was really what pulled us together, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it's called, what did we say? It was like trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Everyone like feared for their lives in a way that made it kind of humorous because we were all in it together and we were just kind of with the idea of like, wow, we're all strangers. We didn't know each other yesterday, but damn, today we got super close.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough about us. So one of the two things I kind of wanted to cover really was, one was just your story. So, you know, how you got into YouTube in the first place, like where you came from and like how it ended up in travel in particular and your different interests, but also just really advice for the kind of noobs of the world. So like me included, you know, I've pestered you already multiple times on how to get started. And I think it's such a daunting thing, YouTube, like even Instagram comparatively, or any of the other social networks. I think YouTube's one of the scariest because it's quite demanding actually, isn't it? You know, it's producing high quality video content largely, and how to do that. So that's the two bits I kind of wanted to get into. So I mean, probably a good starting point would just be when you got into YouTube. I know that I remember when we first started talking, I went to your very first video and you were just shocked that it was still even on the internet.
Yeah, I thought I had taken it down. It was like a total of 57 seconds. And I just put my phone up in front of my face while I was at the airport. And I was like, so I'm at the airport and I'm going to the Philippines. And that was pretty much it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
No, I know why I decided to upload that, because I needed to have something on my channel. So when I started YouTubing, actually influencer wasn't a term. And so it kind of starts with my family, because my mother's Filipino, my dad's American. So we're a Filipino American family. And we've basically lived our entire lives traveling back and forth to the Philippines and California, because my father was a merchant marine, and so he would go out and ship out for 3 to 4 months at a time. And when we were small children growing up, my mom just decided, why don't we just, you know, take the kids out of California, I'll go to the Philippines where my family is, my family will help take care of the kids for 3 to 4 months while my dad's gone. And we would go to this it's not really a small island, actually. It's just a rural island in the Philippines called Mindoro. So we spent a lot of our time as small children going to this island, Mindoro, where my mother was from. And it was very primitive growing up. So like, it was a very, these two worlds between where I grew up here in San Francisco Bay Area and this island in the Philippines were totally like full dichotomies of each other, because here in San Francisco, you know, you've got tech. It's like a very progressive city. Everything's moving really fast. There's so many opportunities. It's very innovative. But then we would go to the Philippines, to this rural island where my mom would put us in school. So I was there for like half of first grade, half of third grade, some middle school. And we would go to these schools and they didn't have electricity in the schools. The windows were kind of like these blinds that you open up and it's like the outside air, you know? So it was kind of like total
Slats
like
kind of thing.
indoor, outdoor living, I guess.
Yeah.
And we had to wear uniforms too. And then also like we only could write in cursive. And the whole idea of school there was like the first half of your day from 8 to 12 was all in Tagalog, and it was all Filipino history. And then you'd go home from 12 to 2 p.m. So for like the lunch period, and then you'd go back to school from 2 to 5 and it was all English, or maybe it was the other way around. Either way, it was like one half of the day was Tagalog and Filipino history. The other half was like all learning in English.
And it's funny that that's like that's exactly the same as your life. Like it was like half there, half in San Francisco. And yeah, San Francisco is like, even compared to say London, where I'm based, as one of the like, you know, top capitals of the world, San Francisco still practically wins in terms of technologically the most advanced place in the world, probably, isn't it?
Right. I mean, when you think about like, you know, most people are using iPhones, right? Or even, you know, if you have an Android, that's Google. I mean, most of the tech we're using these days is headquartered or created or invented in the San Francisco Bay Area. So yeah, so moving in between these two places was it, you know, as a kid, it felt normal to like hop on a plane and, you know, take that 13-hour flight to Manila, sleep in Manila for the night. I never really spent time in Manila until I was older anyway, because we would just go straight to the islands. And so my mom was like constantly throwing my brother and I into these vastly different environments where we just had to adapt. And so I think that was a huge part of like where also like where this like this desire to travel and have new experiences all the time and meet new people. And it came really from my mom just constantly upending us, being like, okay, we're taking you out of school and we're going to go to the island. We're going to go to the Philippines, which was like, I didn't even know where the Philippines was. It was halfway across the world. Most of my friends at the time were like, what, where is the Philippines? Where is that? And I think obviously in the last 20 to 30 years, the Philippines tourism has shot up because of, I'm sure maybe you've seen, there's so many travel websites and tourism websites where Palawan, which is like this cluster of islands in the Philippines, has won like the #1 most beautiful must-see place in the world for like top travel 2019, 20, maybe not 2020 anymore, but it's won a lot of awards. And so I think that's really helped the Philippines get on the map in terms of like, it's not Thailand and it's not Bali, but it's definitely getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it because of your videos. I've seen it, so that's the best advert so far.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was kind of like the backstory. So my brother actually ended up moving over to the Philippines after graduating college. So I graduated in 2012 and my brother graduated in 2013, and he kind of took the approach where he wasn't ready to go to work yet. And so he went straight to the Philippines and kind of used Manila as a base because we have a condo in Manila. Our family has a condo in Manila. So he used it as a base and he traveled around Asia, and he actually ended up, like, long story long, I guess. He got scouted for modeling, started doing a little bit of modeling stuff. By the way, he has zero modeling experience.
He's a good-looking guy, though, definitely. He's got, like, your family, a good-looking group. Like, I can see why he did well for himself.
Yeah. And so he got scouted for modeling, started doing some of that, realized that was not for him. Then because of modeling, started getting into TV, realized TV really wasn't for him, like going to doing commercials and stuff. And so then he turned to YouTube. Now, my brother and I both went to a high school here in San Francisco Bay Area. It was a public high school, but in this high school, there was a school within a school, they called it, and it's called the Marin School of the Arts. And so in going to this public school, you could audition to be in the Marin School of the Arts, and this was focused entirely on creative, kind of like amateur, well, I guess building people up to be a creative professional. So it had everything from like creative writing classes to theater to film and editing to graphic design. And so my brother and I both auditioned separately for different, different classes. And I went into musical theater and he went into film and editing. So this was a huge part of our high school, was he was actually learning how to create, how to make films basically and edit films. And I had done musical theater my whole life. So it was kind of just like obviously I'm going to do musical theater at this high school, at this Marin School of the Arts. So we kind of have this like entertainment kind of creative background already. So when my brother got into YouTube, he started watching vloggers at the time in 2015, which YouTube was kind of, YouTube, the trends of YouTube and what people create on YouTube, they kind of change every couple of years. And in 2015, vlogging, like film or making kind of just, scrappy videos of just showing your face and talking to the camera, and filming your day. That was what was really popular on YouTube then. And so with his kind of film and editing background, he saw all of these YouTubers that were like growing a following by just like making videos out of their day. And he had moved to Manila. By the way, my brother, before he moved, did not know a word of Tagalog because he just didn't learn Tagalog really growing up. For whatever reason, like it didn't really retain in his brain. I don't know why. And so he decided to create a series called The Art of Tagalog, which was like a 4 or 5-part series about basically a Filipino American moving to Manila and immersing himself in the culture, learning Tagalog, learning all these different like slang words and dialects and interacting with the public.
Cool.
And so he kind of created his YouTube channel first using this series, but then he saw that at the time, you know, people were just doing vlogs. And so because he built somewhat of a following, maybe a couple thousand subscribers from this Art of Tagalog series, that actually got some press too, some online press. He started just doing daily vlogs of what it was like as a Filipino American moving to Manila, living in Manila, interacting with everyone. And so he was doing that for maybe less than a year, 2015 to 2016. And at the time I was working in San Francisco. I was living here in San Francisco. I was working, and I would come over to the Philippines, take time off and go to the Philippines to visit my family and to visit him. And I would get there and he would be like, yeah, so I'm making videos on YouTube. And I'd be like, what? Like, what do you mean? And he'd be like, yeah, like people subscribe and I have a following. And I'd be like, what? I don't even, well, you can subscribe? Like I had no idea what this was about. And when I went over there, he kind of showed me what he did. And he was like, I'm going to put you on my videos. And I was like, okay, sure. And it was time in front of like having this camera in my face all the time. I mean, it was actually like a reality show, like a self-made reality show. And so he had the camera in my face all the time. And being in musical theater and being on camera is completely different. I mean, people like try to like say that, oh, it's entertainment, like whatever. No, they're totally different things. Like a camera in your face while you're living your normal daily life is really nerve-wracking until you get used to it.
Yeah, I agree.
I involve that later.
Yeah, I think it's the camera lens especially is like a uniquely scary thing for people, isn't it? Like it's so different to any other situation, like public speaking, you could have done that before and all of these other things. But it's this weird kind of like, I think it's because it's not a human. It's like this kind of like void black spot, which you're like, it just makes people uncomfortable. Yeah, like anyone you meet is uncomfortable. Even me, you know, or you, I think if you've not done it for a while too, it kind of goes away. And then when you have one again, you're like, oh, well, what the hell is this? Like it takes like walking up to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my brother was like, why don't we just make a video? We'll just sit down and we'll just talk to the camera. And like, again, this whole time I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but sure, whatever, I'll do it. Yeah, sounds great. So we set the camera up and him and I just sit there, and you can actually find this on YouTube. I think it's called Filipino Twins. And we had this whole like play that we were twins just because we're so close in age. He's 16 months younger than me. And we just set the camera up and we were just sitting at a desk, and it's just me and him. And I look really awkward because I'm like, what's going on? Why do you have the camera? Blah, blah, blah. And it really is just about our sibling banter and how we interact as twins, but really we're just siblings. So the Filipino community they're very active online. They're very active on YouTube. They're very active on just social media in general. And this is something that we came to really realize once we started making these videos, because with that one video, you know, at the time, I think it got like, whatever, 40 or 50,000 views. And at the time in 2016, we were like, oh my God, it went viral, 50,000 views. You know, we're like, what? We're trying to like equate that to like how we could understand that. So we would say something like, I know that, you know, baseball's not a big thing in England, but here, sold out stadium at the Giants, the AT&T Park is like 36,000 attendees. And we would be like, damn, that's more than a baseball stadium.
I mean, you've covered most stadiums in the whole of the UK, to be fair, because we're smaller than you. So even more impressive.
Yeah, so we're trying to equate that to like how large this audience was that we got to watch this video.
Yeah.
And so my brother saw that as like pretty successful, and then within the same week he was like, okay, we're gonna make another video, because I think I was there for 2 weeks and we made 2 videos. And he was like, okay, you're gonna pretend to take over my vlog. So nice. You know, we'll start out with like, I'm sleeping, you see my camera, you take it, and you know, you have this like sly look, and then you're gonna take my vlog out and do exactly what I do in Manila, but it's gonna be you. Because also my brother had never introduced me like no one knew he had this sister that was in San Francisco. So there was also kind of like this funny kind of family introduction. So, but you know, behind the scenes, we had like this whole plan of what we were going to do. And even though it looks like it's just me on the video, he was behind the camera the entire time being like, okay, now pick up the video. Okay, now say this to the video. Okay, now we're going to do this. And while we're on the tricycle, film himself, you know, jumping up and down and like looking energetic and whatever. So he was basically directing me as I was moving through this video. And then that video ended up getting so many hits that I had people flocking to my YouTube channel and subscribing, even though I had zero content up.
Oh, wow.
And because when that went well, we decided to do another video. And so we kind of just realized that this was working, and we were like, let's make more, we'll do more videos. And meanwhile, I'm still working my job in San Francisco. So this was kind of just like this fun, creative thing that I was like, oh, this is fun. This is creative. Like, this is what his life is.
So
like,
you were still just kind of going over for kind of holidays, was it almost like,
yeah.
Like
Christmas. Like I went over for like 2.5 weeks for Christmas between 2015 and 2016. And we just made these videos together. And then I came back to San Francisco, and I like went back to my job, and everything was fine. And then I had 5,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that. I didn't even know this until my brother like looked up my YouTube channel.
So we're gonna skip to the bit, you know, when I'm gonna ask you this in a bit about, you know, suggestions and advice. Is basically have the most amazing brother in the world. That's the number one tip, isn't it? That's
yeah, seriously. Like, have a sibling that motivates you to get out of your comfort zone. That's number one tip. And so he was like, you have to upload some content. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, what do I like? I like travel. I guess I could do that. I mean, there really wasn't a very big conversation about it. It was more so Will called me and was like, you have 5,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel, put something up. And I was like, all right. So I think it was like that first 50-second video of me at the airport, which I'm pretty sure I've taken down already. And then, so my first videos were like, you know, I had taken another 2 weeks off. Like this is 2016, summer of 2016. I took another couple of weeks off to travel to Turkey and Greece for the first time. And I knew that I was like, oh, I could easily make a video about this. Okay. Easy as in every time I pulled my camera out, my phone, I didn't have any cameras. I was like, and then I would just freeze. And then I'd be like, what do I even say? Maybe I should have a couple drinks first, and then I'll feel loose. So then I would like have a couple drinks or two, and then I would feel a little bit more loose and like comfortable, and then really not give a fuck about what anyone else was thinking or seeing or looking at me. And so that's kind of, oh God, honestly, that's what kind of gave me the courage in the beginning. I'm gonna write these down as well. So be an alcoholic, add that on top of the specialist brother. Yeah. And really like the whole idea was just like it's so nerve-wracking to put yourself on camera in front of people. They're like, what is this person doing? But like at the end of the day, no one around you gives a fuck what you're doing. Like no one thinking about you except you thinking about yourself, you know? And that's like the biggest thing that most people have to get past is the fact that like no one is thinking about you, you know?
Yeah. I always think as well, I'm like, and I always say this, that obviously, you know, production value is so important for so many reasons, but I always find though at the same time, it's the things that go wrong and it's the humanity that's always the best parts. Like, and I always make this point of like, we've posted on Instagram, like I obviously run a social media company, and we've posted unbelievable epic, you know, wildlife filmography, which was done by professionals, just unbelievably high standards. And then I posted me hungover, jumping out of bed, yawning, pretending I'm okay. And obviously I got like triple, quadruple the engagement on me being an idiot, jumping out of bed, hungover. So it's like the humanity is what people look for. And I think, you know, alcohol is the classic, isn't it? Things like that, anything that makes you just actually pause and act like a real human and, you know, do what you actually would do and think what you actually think and, you know, be true to yourself in that very cliche way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say that that would help everyone else, but in the beginning, to get myself on camera, I was like, what's going to make me loose right now in the moment where I'm traveling and I'm just really not going to care as much. So yeah, having a couple drinks, that worked for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, so that's basically how I got into YouTube. And it really was a hobby. There was no thinking, you know, oh, I could make this into a career. I could somehow like get paid to travel the world. There was none of that thinking. I was in San Francisco. I was working at a tech job where I was 25 years old and making $120,000 a year. Why would I ever think about leaving that job and starting a channel? No, that was crazy talk, right? I mean, that wasn't even a thought. I didn't even think about that. And so it was more so of like in the beginning, just this creative outlet where like, wow, I could talk to a ton of people by making these videos and show people like, yeah, this is my life in San Francisco. I work at a tech job and then I travel sometimes, and what I really love to do is travel. But what I also like to do on the side is like exercise. And so it was, in a way, it was just a hobby. It wasn't a side hustle at all.
Yeah.
And it was also really cool to think about how YouTube offered this platform where, never minding everyone else, I could create videos on my own and document what my life it was in, the early 21st century. Is that where we're in? Yeah. And then like one day, if I ever got married and have kids, there's so many ifs in that statement, but if that ever happened, they could look back and be like, oh my God, my grandma was like traveling around the world or working at tech and this is what life was like. So it really was like a really cool idea as like just a period piece study. And I'm a huge history buff and history is my favorite subject. So that was just part of, what I really liked about YouTube. And also like I got to learn a lot of these really interesting skills. Like I finally got to learn photography and like videography and I finally got to learn how to edit. And these are just creative skills that I've always been interested in having an entertainment background. So that's kind of how I started getting into YouTube. And I didn't like plan out my videos. I didn't think about like, what can I do next? It was really like, what am I doing today? Oh, maybe I can film it and like make a video out of it. That's pretty much it. But there was no strategy then.
And it's so often the case, again, the name of this podcast is Ambitious Creators Podcast. Like it's people very often who are trying to aim for something very big. And I did come up with the name of this and I was going to write about it a while ago and I had a really good name for it, but I'll give it the bad name that I'm going to remember right now, is like the leap of faith, which is like this kind of single moment in, I feel like, a lot of people's lives, which most people don't take, sadly. And it's the, I was in a similar position. I was in like a really good sales career and everything. And I had this moment where I said to myself, like, okay, but is this it? Is this the end? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Or do I feel like there's more there? And like this closer to your kind of central point of like where you really are actualizing yourself in a kind of deeper sense. And I think it's the same for you. And I think it's the really nice natural progression that you went through of having it not, some people have to just do it completely, but you had this amazing opportunity where you had your brother, kind of like throw it at you almost. And then you had this like gradual organic thing that grew into something. And it just worked though, because it was so congruent to who you are. And then it's just like the same as me, like, if I'm working on software and technologies, some of the stuff I love, you can just lose days to it. And I can attest to, you being at my flat and having to hide in the room in your den, essentially, it became, to edit for like pretty much 24 hours straight, I think, at one point.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I had a really good paying job. I started my career out working at a very successful tech company called Lyft, which I know that you know this, but for everyone else, I was one of the first 100 employees at Lyft. And I worked my ass off. I hustled at that job. And I really, like, within 6 months, I got promoted to the next. And then couple months later, I got promoted to the next. So what I ended up doing was I was launching Lyft all over the country. I was helping grow the company from the base up. I would like, for example, launching Chicago. I would get into Chicago. I would rent a satellite office. I would hire all the staff. I would hire all the drivers, hundreds of drivers. We would go through training sessions. And then at the same time, we were also trying to do some ground marketing. And that had a lot of like sales and outreach stuff. And so, you know, I really have this like very structural tech kind of scrappy startup background coming from working in San Francisco. And then after Lyft, I went to work for this other company who basically said, they contacted me at Lyft and they're like, wow, like you have done an amazing job. We'll pay you double what Lyft pays you. Obviously at the time, like I was 25 years old. I was like, oh my God, money, you know? And so I went to this job and I did really enjoy it, but I was, you know, it took me 6 months for me to be like, okay, like this was like the biggest realization I had, which was surprising. Within 6 months, you know, I was working basically 9:30 to 4 o'clock every day. I'd get off and I'd be like, all right, what do I do with my day? Like, you know, it really wasn't such, it wasn't that difficult to do this job. And it was a realization that hit me that I was like, I feel unsatisfied. I don't feel fulfilled from what I'm doing. Like, is what I'm doing actually helping people out in the world? I don't feel like I'm making a deeper connection to people. I'm not really having these brand new experiences that I really yearn and crave for. And it was this moment in these couple months where I was like, I don't care about how much money I make. It doesn't matter to me. Like, it's not making me happy. So, within that, it was like everything came down at the same time, because within that same couple months, I like went to the Philippines. I basically went to the Philippines because I needed a break from work and I needed to figure out what I really wanted to get into. And in the beginning of that thought that came across me, I was like thinking, oh, okay, I could just do remote jobs. And I could be anywhere I wanted to be in the world. And so I like scoured the internet for remote jobs. I signed up for all of these emailing lists, figuring out what kind of remote jobs are out there. And at the same time, that was in the Philippines, at the same time, my brother was like, let's make these videos. And I was like, sounds great. This is fun. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So like, you know, within 6 months after that was when I was like, really starting to gain a following on YouTube. And then from there, this is like jumping kind of further, but so by being on my brother's YouTube, there was this travel company in the Philippines who like brings on different hosts. And they reached out to my brother to be like, hey, we saw your sister. Do you think she could host this one travel segment? It's an online travel show. Can she host this travel segment? And, you know, it's not paid, but we'll take you around the Philippines for a week and she can bring whoever she wants. And so obviously he said that to me and I was like, yes. And so I went to my manager at work and I told him about this. And I was like, I think this is a really cool opportunity. I would love it if you allowed me to do this. Also, because we had clientele in Manila, I was like, I'll go to our clients in Manila. I'll meet with them. I'll do trainings with them. You know, I'll do work while I'm also taking 5 days off to do this travel host. And he thought it was awesome. So he let me do that. And in a way, he also kind of helped me realize that I didn't want to end up working at that company more. And this is what I kind of knew was like, I had this opportunity now. What else could spring up from this? So
maybe he was just deep down, he knew that he was going to lose you anyway. So he was like, I just got to let it go. Let it fly away.
So that's kind of what sprung. And then within probably 4 months of that, I was like, just continued searching for other jobs. And I was still doing YouTube on the side. I never had the thought of becoming a YouTuber full time. Like I always have, like another thing that's never crossed my mind before this was I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to be a CEO, but I realized that like, I didn't want to work at this company. And then as I was searching for all these other companies, I was like, I don't really want to work for those people either. Oh, I guess what if I just worked for myself? Could be an idea. And so by, let's say, September 2016 was when I like had the last conversation with my manager, told him how I was feeling. Actually, it was a CEO. And he was happy for me that I was going to go just venture off and take 2 to 3 months off, figure out what I wanted to do. But I didn't quit that job without having another job lined up. So I actually had another job lined up as another launcher, a tech launcher. And I was going to go to Asia and help launch this business app in like Malaysia and a couple other countries in Asia. But I had such a good relationship with this guy, the CEO of this company, that he was like, and I told him how I was feeling. I was like, I'm not really sure where I want to go with this, but like, I would love to continue talking to you and maybe contract during this time, because I did need to take 2 to 3 months off to figure out what I really wanted to do. Yeah. So I ended up going to Manila. After I quit the job, I went to Manila to, again, use it as a base like my brother did, and just travel around Asia and also help him kind of get this app off the ground, this business app. And I contracted for him for a month, staying on payroll. Always got to stay on payroll. That's the most important thing. Like, payroll is important. And then I helped him set some things up. And so, the understanding was that I was going to come back to San Francisco after 2 or 3 months and begin this job full time. But I had done just enough in that month period for him that I was like, I think I really liked the work that we're doing, but I think I need to really like venture off and figure something out. Yeah. And he was like, great, thanks for all the work that you did in the meantime, here's your paycheck. Nice. And I was like, yeah, this is my last paycheck for like 12 months. And then I just kind of dove. I was like, well, YouTube is kind of the only thing I have right now. And I had saved plenty of money to be able to sustain myself for at least 6 months traveling, and enough money to come back to San Francisco and like look for a job. So I kept all of my options open. Like, all the doors were open all the time. Anyone wanted to have a conversation with me, I said, yes, let's talk. Yeah. And within this is pretty much how, like, I kept uploading videos to YouTube. And this is pretty much how I got my foot in the door being, influencer wasn't the term at the time, but like, being a blogger. That was what we were calling it. Yeah. I don't know what it's called anymore. But it was just because people found my YouTube channel. They would reach out to me, hey, let's collaborate. And I'd be like, yeah, sure. I would take all of the conversations, I would talk to everyone, because everyone knew so much more than I did. I went into it not knowing anything. And I think that's super important for everyone to know, like, going into anything new is just like, talk to as many people as possible and ask all the questions and be open and embrace the change. Because if you kind of like shield yourself from having those conversations, there might be a missed opportunity of something that you could have learned that was valuable. And if, as an example, one of these these Instagrammers actually reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to have a shoot? And I was like, I don't know what that is, but yeah, let's do it. And obviously, again, I didn't know anything about really Instagram either. Like, all I knew was uploading videos to YouTube. And so I did this little thing with this Instagrammer who at the time had 10,000 followers. But I learned so much from her in that one day. And she was the one who then said, I'll refer you to this group travel that Indonesia, a tourism company, is doing for Southeast Asian creators, because of your YouTube channel. My Instagram was kind of lacking because of your YouTube channel. And so that was my foot in the door, where I was like, yes, this sounds amazing. Like, I would love to go to Bali, and whatever. I don't think they paid that much, but it was a week trip to Indonesia, and with all of these other creators. And that's where really the beginning of where everything started, and it snowballed. And I just kept talking to so many people.
I really like that
people.
Just to say, you keep using the word snowball, and it's perfect, because that's the name of my company now.
Oh yeah,
it's even on
bring it back.
Yeah. Every time you say snowball, we make another £10. I think to be fair as well, people always talk about entrepreneurship, and they think of a certain character, or someone who's probably a marketing consultant, someone like myself maybe, or more cliche situations, like they're, you know, drop shipping and things like that. But I think there's more of a purist entrepreneur, which is less of a kind of douchey word meaning of it, which is more just honestly following stuff that you love and, you know, creating a life from that. And I think that's the big thing. And I mean, yeah, to skip to the end, the bit which I'll say for you, you've obviously just won Best in Travel from the Shorty Awards only like a month ago, was it? Or 2 months ago, I guess.
Yeah, in May. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really ironic because I won Best in Travel and I accepted the award like from my room.
Yeah. That is like, that is for anyone who doesn't know, Shorty Awards is like the biggest it gets, and that is spectacular. Like you're up against some like huge other names, and
Yeah. Yeah. So
know.
the Shorty Awards are awards given out to anything like online social media, pretty much, and it's an American awards show based in New York City, but obviously anyone that's in social media online, some of the biggest names are all in the nominees list.
Yeah, and it was, and I think you should be very proud of that. I think it's, and I think the biggest thing from all of the points you've said, and it's, what we'll go into now actually is advice for all of the noobs, because I think this fits in well with it. And one thing I take from that straight away is, and I think it's connected to the quote which you live by, which I liked so much. What is that? Because I've forgotten it and I haven't looked it up.
Yeah, so it's, we rise by lifting others.
Yeah, that's the best quote. That is a bit like the tide rises. There's an English one which is like about the boat rises with the tide, or something like all boats rise with the tide, or something like that. And it's this, yeah, it's really always been one of my favorites. And I think, you know, saying yes to all of these things and like, you know, working with people and supporting them, always trying to give. That's been like one of the most consistent traits that I've noticed about you, and above and beyond others too. Like the difference of your optimism and enthusiasm and passion about things that we talk about is so obvious, and it's like, is that really a coincidence that you're like that and you're the one who's had such success with YouTube and all of these things? And then others, sometimes you'll speak to someone who's barely even started in social media, for example, or YouTube or other places, but they get these kind of like chip on their shoulder, like they need to defend themselves, like it's this kind of zero-sum game where you're like, well, no, I've got to convince this company to give me as much as I can so that I win in this situation. But, you know, then that destroys the relationship, and people might not, you know, and I think that quote sums it up the best. And I think to say it for you, I'd say that's the biggest tip for any noob to starting out in this kind of world, is just say yes to more. And yeah, I mean, you can probably explain it better. This is your mantra.
Yeah. Well, so in the beginning, you know, especially for social media, you can't go to a university and study for your degree on social media. And because the internet, there's so much information on the internet now, like influencers, an actual career. I mean, it you know, it's a self-made kind of career, but there is an opportunity for you to make YouTubing or being a social media influencer as a career. But since you don't know anything from the beginning, the best way to do it is to talk to everyone and ask me as many questions as you possibly can. And you know, follow different YouTubers and follow other Instagrammers. There's just so much information on like how to, you know, gain a following, or like how to begin as a social media influencer, if that's what you want to do. I mean, you can literally do anything you want at this point. And so what I will say to all of the beginner creators out there, anyone who wants to be a YouTuber, is you can make it a full-time career, as long as you don't focus on the ad money as your only source of income, because you do need to have multiple sources of income if your goal is to be a full-time YouTuber. And you can do that by starting YouTube on the side. Like you cannot just become a YouTuber all of a sudden and feel, you know, and make enough income for you to live your life, honestly. The hardest part about social media, honestly, is like promoting yourself without being salesy. Yeah. And also having a system in place to be able to control your business.
Yeah.
You don't want your income to depend 100% on the survival of YouTube or any other platform for that matter. And I understand that these days it is really tough out there because the competition on YouTube has vastly increased. Also on Instagram, just in general, social media.
Interrupt. Yeah, that's probably like a really important question, which is like, me as so my business, for anyone listening, is Snowball Creations. We help people with all kinds of different social networks. Like we help people grow Instagram followings. We help people with YouTube and all sorts. But that's the best question, which people are always scared to ask is, in 2020, coming into 2021, unfortunately already, should the average person use YouTube? Is YouTube the place to be still? Is it right for someone to use that as their like outlet if they do want that lifestyle of a creator, potentially film in particular, probably?
Yeah. I really think that the internet is so vast, and I think that there's just plenty of room on the internet for anyone and everyone to do what they love and to try and I guess start a YouTube channel. But like, okay, what I think is really important is because there's so much information online about every single little thing about like, how to promote your channel or what you should focus on, or even, the analysis and data of YouTube and your views and whatever. I think you should understand the business side of doing a YouTube channel because it is a long-term game. That's really it. Like you are most definitely not going to make 5 viral videos that will get you millions of views. And at the same time, like those views aren't going to, those people subscribing to your channel because of viral content, they're not very loyal. They just want to see like funny, entertaining, quick clips probably. But understanding the business side of doing YouTube is it's a long-term game. And I know that this is probably something you hear a bajillion times, but you have to be consistent because consistency is key. It really is. Like you need to commit. If you really want to be a YouTuber, you need to commit your time. 1 video a week. That's it. And in just doing this, just like, when you take a job and you're ramping up and you're learning how to do something, or just like when you attend a college and you decide to do a certain major, you're not going to be good at it immediately, not even in a month, not even in a year. Like this is going to take time. It's going to take years. And so you have to stay consistent. Start small and later you can scale up. But like just by starting and doing 1 a week, or maybe 1 every other week, whatever you have time to do, that alone will allow you to like learn and grow. And then, you also, there's just so much information on how to do all this now. Like, it's like, I think the biggest inhibitor of people starting is just being nervous to be on camera. But that's also something that like repetition, what is that phrase? Like repetition is, no, I can't think of it right now, but you already, know what I'm talking about.
If you repeat it lots, it goes away.
Yeah. Like, okay, think about doing like your first 50 videos, your first 5 or 10 videos is always going to be shit. And you're going to look back and you're like, oh my God, that was the worst thing ever. Cringing. By your 50th video, you will have started feeling natural on camera. You will have kind of gotten even a little bit better at storytelling, but you can't just like, and I think that, I also think that one of the biggest inhibitions of people not starting is they're like, well, what do I talk about? What am I going to make a video about?
Yeah, that's my question as well, is to touch on that, is like people often have lots of interests. So, there's a lot of people say that you should just focus on one thing. So for me and you had this conversation actually a long time ago now. And it was like, I'm interested in weights. I'm interested in technology. I'm interested in travel. We're like, how do you combine those things? And obviously you do to a degree with travel and tech and lifestyle stuff. But yeah, how do you manage that too?
Yeah, no, I really did. I mean, like when I first started my YouTube channel, it was, like it was travel, but then I wasn't always traveling. So I was like, how else can I, what else can I synthesize all of my knowledge into like a video? Oh, I like exercising. Oh, like this, maybe people will want to know what my daily life is like working in tech in San Francisco for young professionals. But I think that I just went with what I knew. And so I would make videos on the things that I really liked and what I knew mostly that could potentially, I mean, at the time, again, I wasn't thinking about this at the time, but now, like in speaking to new creators, how can you provide value? Like what can I learn from your video? Or can I be entertained from your video? What can you give to the world that a million other people also give to the world, which is totally fine. Like we can all make the same videos. We can all have the same ideas, except it's all going to be different because you are a completely different person. You are a little snowflake. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, okay, you know what, here's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I did when I was really starting to get into YouTube and eventually quit my job and decided I just wanted to be a YouTuber, make videos. Yeah. I watched so many different creators, and from there I got so much inspiration. So some of my early videos, you can go back and see that like some of the cinematography or like the way that did my vlogs, the style was like totally Casey Neistat because I used to watch so many Casey Neistat videos. And then there was a period where like I started to make my videos like Lily Singh, who is this huge entertainment YouTuber, one of the biggest female YouTubers in the world. My videos started being like her, my vlogs started being like hers. And then through like all of this inspiration and all these creators that I was watching, I kind of just started realizing what I liked and and how I wanted to be in general, just not just on the camera, but like what I wanted to provide in my videos. And so I do different videos. Like I do tech videos and social media videos, like tech advice. I do challenges and I do travel adventures. And those are pretty much like vlog style travel stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that everyone should just start with what you know. Like I think that you kind of limit yourself if you decide that you're only going to be like a fitness YouTube, because like what if in 3 years you are like, what if in 3 years you're like, I don't really want to do weights anymore, I'm gonna get into yoga. And so then you start, and that's fine, but like everyone transforms and evolves. Like you're not going to stay the same. Like we don't really change much, but we evolve, right? And so and especially as you get older, you have different interests, you get into different things. And so I think it's really good to just like the first things first is to just sit down with your camera, write notes, like brainstorm about the things that you want to do, and just talk to your camera, and like always write out what you're going to talk about before you do it, because then that kind of like it helps you with your storytelling and actually what you're going to convey in the video in general. So I personally, I don't think that anyone should think about their YouTube channel just offering this one thing. Unless you know that like in 10 years you're still going to be talking about that one thing. Like for example, like maybe if you're a doctor and you want to do like a side YouTube channel about like doctor advice or whatever, that makes sense. Or like if you're a lawyer, you want to do a side YouTube channel about like how to be a better lawyer. I'm not really sure, but those types of people know what they want to do because they've basically studied their entire lives and are like executing that career now. But like for people who are maybe young professionals or who still, I would say that like there's no right path. And I think that you're just going to continue discovering the more that you do. You just have to do it. You just have to sit down and do it.
I think it's the way I always look at it as well is the same with Instagram and same with most places that try and say you should focus on one thing. It's like we are multifaceted beings. We aren't this single dimension. Like you don't just travel. That's not your only thing. Like you have other interests. Like when you're just at home, you go out and work out and you enjoy that and you want to experience other things of life. Like it's weird to just have one level and it's hollow. Like people don't want that. Even if you are a travel influencer or a fitness influencer or whatever your passion is, even like a fitness person, like say I follow some bodybuilders and stuff, and they have such a passion for bodybuilding, but you want to learn about their world, because that's part of the story too, isn't it? Is someone who's interested in bodybuilding or interested in traveling the world, how do they manage like even things like relationships, you know, like that's a hard thing for someone who travels a lot. So that's like an interesting thing that someone wants to understand. Or how do you keep healthy when you're traveling all over the world so much? Like, so I think it makes sense that you would talk about all of these other topics, wouldn't it? It's almost like an alien dimension to focus in on just travel. It's almost like not admitting the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think YouTube is just such a great platform for showing all raw sides like that. Whereas like, I think Instagram, I just think Instagram, there's just so much room for like superficial, you know, especially in the travel world, like making everyone look like they live a glorious lifestyle. You guys, let me tell you, it is not like that. You see the tip of the iceberg. Everything below is just hard. It's really difficult. And then, you know, most of the time, also just for you guys to know, travel influencers don't make much money. They make it seem like they get all the stuff for free and they make all this money and they travel the world. No. It is like grueling, raw, tough work. It is a huge privilege to be in this industry and in that world, but like, you know, you should know that there's so much more work and grueling hard nights and no sleep and you know, be like, especially if you're just, and also I think lastly, one of the biggest things that make it difficult for people to start YouTube channel is just putting themselves out there in the world, because you're thinking all this time about what people are thinking about you. Like people are judging you and you're embarrassed to like show your friends about what you're doing, you know, and you're doing everything yourself and you're sleeping at 3 a.m. But I think like embarrassment is the biggest feeling that people have, or like, you know, just, I would say like put aside your ego and just stop thinking about what everyone thinks about you, because honestly, at the end of the day, no one is thinking about you.
And I definitely agree with you as well. Like it reminded me of this Costa Rica trip we did, and it was, you know, an absolutely spectacular trip, but it was ultimately a film trip. Like we went there specifically to make a film, and I'll link it actually in this because it's on YouTube. If somebody's watching this on YouTube, it'll be on podcast as well. But it's I remember how intense that whole thing was. Just, you know, you don't just go on a nature hike. You go on a nature hike with a huge, massive, what's it called, stand over your shoulder, and like a massive backpack with a drone in it. And you have like, you know, a team of people to help you get everything through it all. And then you're also trying to like trek through a jungle, like especially nature tourism and trying to make films in the natural world. Like it's intense and hard, but you just have to take those moments to pause. Like our Iceland trip obviously was a bit more relaxed actually, because it was more leading group rather than filming. But even so, like you just have those moments where everything is still, there's nothing to do at that moment, and you just kind of like look up and you're like, wow, this is what it's all made for. Like there's, I did a little video. Luckily for me, I'm the one who gets filmed, and Andy was the one filming it in that situation. So my job was to be in the moment, and luckily I was, because we saw this spider monkey flying through the canopy, and I remember that so vividly, and it was one of my favorite moments of the entire trip. But yeah, it's trying to find those in between, actually, what is a really grueling situation, actually. If you really want to build that or create that high level travel content, especially, it's like you're kind of sacrificing the moment, aren't you? You're rather than being in that moment, you're saying, I have to film this moment to create something for other people. It's kind of like I don't know.
Yeah. And you know, at the end of the day, the beauty of what those people do is that once you get into that groove of like, you know, traveling and then taking out your camera to talk about it, and then filming like what feels like every single piece of your trip. Yeah. Once you know how to do that, or let's say once you get your first 50 videos in, you then can really start, you can start enjoying the moment. And like the beauty of what we do is that we do enjoy all of these moments, yet we also know exactly what to capture. so that we're kind of getting the best of both worlds, and we're not, I mean, in the beginning, like, you're just going to feel like you need to capture everything, because that's just, that's just how you feel. Like, nothing can go, there's no moment that can be missed. So you have to capture everything. But then, let's say again, first 50 videos, you really start knowing like what you need to capture. Then you put your camera away and you're like, okay, I'm here and I can like continue moving on. And then, you just kind of go about your day.
Yeah.
Just knowing what you should keep your camera out for and what you should put it away for.
Personally as well, I think for me, one of the things I noticed was it's very much like a bottomless pit when it comes to each video, in terms of like, say if you want to do a weekly video, it's so easy to try and go big. Like, it's so easy to think of an idea, and then suddenly that idea involves you having to go to like 4 different locations, and you have to do all of this editing, and maybe you're quite new to editing as well. So it ends up taking like 3 or 4 days to do this massive thing. So do you have like an approach to that in terms of like, I mean, I know that you partly don't, because you did 24 hours straight editing when I was with you. So clearly you can get sucked into it as well. Of like, how do you manage that? Like, how would you recommend people like almost control how much time they put into these? Because I remember at one point I said to myself, oh, I'll just try and keep it 1 day. I'm only allowed 1 day of editing, for example. But then it's like, is it done yet? Or I don't know, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, the first thing I would say is, before you film, write it all down and know what you're going to say, so that you don't spend so much time turning the camera on and then just going blank and being like, what did I want to say again? So like, that takes you all this time, just writing everything down. The second thing is, make a shot list. So know what you're going to shoot beforehand, and keep this like notepad with you all the time when you're out getting shots, right? So that it's like, time is of the essence. And then once you have, your like narration or whatever, or your desktop talking to the camera and your shots, and then when you go into the editing room, like, I would say when you first start editing, put all of the shots on your timeline, organize the shots by like basically what you wrote out, and just know that there is a point in editing where it's like diminishing returns. Like, the more you work on this video, like, sure, you can take weeks to perfect a video in the editing room, but you really, it's like, what's most important is getting it done. And so if you give yourself like 5 hours to edit, just at 5 hours, you got to just cut it off, and you got to say to yourself, this is it. That was a really good run. Like, I had a really good, learning experience for that. Okay, on to the next video. I'm going to be faster at it. It's going to go, my time is going to be spent more efficient, and I'm going to optimize my time, because again, just the more that you do it, the better you get at it, and the faster you're able to get things done.
Yeah, got it. I'm writing this down. These are my notes. I'm going to be 50 videos down in the next month.
Yeah, I know we've talked over an hour, but just on the side, if you want to know my exact production schedule, I'd be happy to share with you.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, so lastly, really, is just what's next for you? So obviously you've had quite a makeover recently. Like, Haley takes over the world, or takes on the world. Takes over the world would be more aggressive.
Yeah. That was definitely in the queue, but yeah, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, what's next? What do you have plans for the next like year ahead? Obviously you've got these trips.
Yeah, so because travel was pretty much killed off by the pandemic, I basically had to adapt to what was happening, which is ultimately what I do in my travels. I'm like adapting to my environments at all times. When I had to come home, I just had to adapt to what was going to happen for the foreseeable future. And so I decided like this was a time that I'm going to spend basically creating content that was, I guess, wasn't just travel centric, and also creating content that I could sustain for the rest of my life, because I know that travel, I'm not going to be able to, like, I was on the road for 300 days a year for the last 4 years in a row.
Wow.
That's not sustainable for anyone. And that was, and so And for me, I really prefer structure. Like that's the best way that I learn is like through people teaching me, like being in a room of people smarter than me, and structure. And so this was my time to take back and control and figure out what was, and this is one of the biggest things about being a social media influencer too, is that like you need to create a content schedule that you can commit to for the rest of your life. And so that's what I've been doing, is I've basically spent the last 8 months creating a content schedule where I commit to a video a week, and I commit to so many Instagram posts a week. And in 8 months, it's taken me this long to finally get this process down. And I'm telling you, like, I felt like I was starting over again. It was like, wow, like I was getting videos out kind of like once every 2 weeks, once every 10 days, sometimes 2 a week. Like it was just so inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And so I've kind of turned this social media travel life into like a 9 to 5 in a way, because I created structure for myself. And so that's what I'm doing now, is I'm just trying to figure out how I can continue to have this YouTube channel, to have my social media in a way that's sustainable for the rest of my life. And that's what I'm doing.
That's a good goal.
I'm going to be traveling again, like towards the end of the year, but my content's just not going to be as travel focused. And so that has also kind of just been difficult in a way, because it did feel like I was starting over at ground zero, and like my views decreased a lot. But because that's what rebranding is all about, like you are kind of just starting from scratch and like beginning this whole, I mean, you would know, right?
Yeah, we just did it. Yeah. And a nice question is, how can we help you? So obviously you're trying to build this sustainable kind of lifestyle for yourself. Like, how can I help you, and how can everybody listening help you? How can we support, the channel and the work that you do to make it, get you quicker and quicker to that sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah. You can give me money.
Just cash payments.
Yeah. You can just go to my YouTube channel and press play on the videos and walk away.
Yeah.
Get that view in. So I think that, when you were going through rebranding with Snowball, it was kind of funny because like I had been thinking about doing this whole rebranding thing for months, because my name, Haley Dasovich, doesn't really mean anything. Like if someone who heard it didn't know who I was, they'd be like, that doesn't mean anything to me, right?
But
Haley takes on the
anyone who does know what it is, it means so much.
But like Haley Takes on the World is has so much, like you have an idea. You're like, oh damn, like what is she doing? Is she like, I was gonna say something that's PC. God, I really have to be careful. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Haley Takes on the World has a different connotation than just my name.
Yeah.
So I guess what I could learn from you is Jesus. This is like such a vague question, but like, how can I sustain my business, and like, what can I offer to people other than my YouTube videos and other than my Instagram? How can I be valuable? And in a way, I'm trying to strategize like some sort of, social media consulting package, or like some sort of social media online course.
Yeah.
But, and I think a lot of creators would be like, it'd be good for them to move into that. But I just don't know, because I'm only looking at like 3 months ahead. And so I don't know how to look at the bigger picture 2, 3, 5 years down the road and think, what am I going to be doing then? And how am I going to be sustaining myself to make enough money? Like, where am I going to be? So like, I guess that's like, how do I make a plan? Like what, what's the first way to look at like strategizing, at least even like 1 year down the road?
I think for me it's like I like ideas, and like big ideas that are scalable in some way. And I think you have like this amazing kind of knowledge base, like all this stuff that we talked about in the call and everything. And I've told you briefly about it once before, I think, but it's gone a lot further along, and I'm happy to talk about it in this video, even like the founders ecosystem or the creators ecosystem that we're creating. And I think that kind of combination of, I think that the challenge is often that sometimes people will get some kind of short-term video they might watch or something, like maybe even this, and they'll get some kind of knowledge and information from it. But then how do you kind of like support that person? So I think already it makes sense, you know, like I noticed it in your Instagram, I think it was, that like, you know, you're coaching, that kind of approach to it. That's amazing. And I think it's that continuous support, a bit like I keep going about fitness, but my personal trainer, he's done a really good job for me, and I've like massively radically improved my fitness because of him, because it's this regular weekly kind of support from him, which is for people that take it seriously, you know, like that's not a cheap thing to do, to get someone's one-to-one attention and support like that. But if it's your, like, you know, life passion, then it's worth it, you know. So I think that that's something that'd be really exciting, and I think it's naturally how people move in that direction anyway when they get older, is they want to help others to do what they've done, basically. So I think that's my instinct.
Yeah. And I think, again, like, you know, I think I need to be reminded of this, that patience is so important, you know, because even for me, like the things that I feel like I want to do in a couple years, I'm still so far away from, I don't know, like, for example, like, let's just say, for example, one of my like big vision goals was like, oh, wow, it'd be super cool to win an Emmy. Oh, but what would I win an Emmy from? My YouTube channel, you know? And so it's like, I have this vision in my head where like, I'm winning the Emmy, but like and right now well, I wouldn't say that I'm on the path, but like, I'm figuring out the path to get to that Emmy. Like, it's there and I see it and I know it's going to happen. Well, I hope it's going to happen. I am optimistic that it's going to happen, and I'm going to do all the work to make it happen. And I see it, but like, what is this path that's going to take me there? It's going to take years. It's going to take a lot of hard work still.
Yeah.
But like, that's kind of, I guess, like the biggest vision goal that
basically you're talking to the wrong person, because I am the person that says, well, fuck that. Like, I think patience is good in terms of don't fall apart and go all over the place, but steady and stable, but moving extremely fast forward, and, you know, snowballing forward is, you know, like our business is literally grown by like 30% over the last month, and it's really starting to go absolutely crazy, and you can do the same. There's no reason why, you know, aim for that Emmy quick. Like, what's the big moves that you can make right now? You know, if you think it's going to take you a year, what would you need to do to make that take, you know, a month instead? And think those big questions, and, you know, throw patience out the window. I think patience is too often the safe word for people who are nervous about making big decisions.
That's a really good, that's a great way to look at it, for sure.
Okay, cool. We've gone on, but I wanted to, you know, I said to you keeping it under an hour, but I've enjoyed this. I don't care. I'm going to, it's hard for me to stop it now, even. We'll wrap it up. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This has been a really good conversation. You can find Hayley on Hayley Takes on the World on YouTube, and it's the same on Instagram, isn't it? Is that right? And you can find me on I'm_Max_Sinclair, and Snowball Creations is my startup. I've really enjoyed working with you. The Iceland trip was amazing and everything, but I'm glad I got you on here. And I will do as Hayley says and make these more regular from here on out. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.